Local stories, information and events. This is KC News.
Afternoon.
Hi, everyone. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Excited to have you all here. Excited to have Chairman Priebus here, as well as Chairwoman Mickelsen. So far, we've had a very exciting trip. We're really excited about what we've been able to show the committee, and we're still have plenty more to show them, but glad to take a break today to answer any questions you might have. So I'm first going to turn it over to my co-chair with 2016 KC, and that is Mayor Sly James.
Well, thank you, and thanks for everybody for being here. I want to just let you know it's been a great honor and joy to have an opportunity to get to know Chairwoman Enid Mickelsen, the chairwoman of the 2016 RNC Site Selection Committee. It's also been a great joy to spend some time with and get to know the chairman of the Republican National Party, Reince Priebus. I am very pleased that they're sitting here in Kansas City right now and giving us an opportunity to let them see what we're all about. They're here to learn the ins and outs of Kansas City and to see how we plan to pull off the best possible convention for them in 2016. One of the things that I've talked to the Site Selection Committee last night about was the fact that this is a big deal for our city. Other than perhaps the Olympics, I can't think of any thing where we would invite people into our city that would have a greater impact or put us on a larger stage. Our buses have welcome signs on them. There are banners being hung. The digital signs on downtown businesses are all very positive. We had employees of Winstead's yesterday take skyscrapers and malts out to the bus as they did their tour. With some unintended consequences. Nonetheless, I think it went over well. It showed, I think it was just one of those personal touches that we were able to put on to show the unique personality and hospitality of Kansas City. This isn't just a big deal for Republicans. This is a big deal for our entire city, and one that we should all embrace. You guys hear me talk about it all the time, so I'm going to turn this back over to people who are guests in our city and who are truly in charge of this process. Enid Mickelsen, the chairwoman of the 2016 RNC Site Selection Committee, and Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican National Party. And we'll start with you, Enid.
Great, thank you. It is a pleasure for me to be back in Kansas City. We were here a month ago for our technical team visit, and saw so many things that impressed us that we wanted to bring the rest of the committee back and give them an opportunity to see everything that Kansas City has to offer. You have a beautiful city. I'm from the West. People keep apologizing for the weather. I'd love to bring it home with me if I possibly could. We're in a drought, and so to see the way that you've used these beautiful rolling hills with your parkways and the water and just a beautiful community. And there's a real sense of tradition and community spirit here that we've been able to enjoy through your host committee. If I start mentioning names, I'll forget some, so I'm not going to start doing that, but I will say that we've been so impressed, not only by the technical abilities of the people that we've talked with as far as the physical requirements that we have, but the people who are leading the fundraising effort. It's very clear to us that this is an all-in effort by your community. And that means a lot to us. When we came in yesterday, I saw people who'd walked out of their storefronts and were waving at us as we went by. And I have to tell you, I went to the New York City convention, as I said earlier this morning, and it wasn't always waves. I mean, sometimes it was a different gesture. And so to see the welcome that we have gotten from the people of Kansas City has just been tremendous. And we appreciate it very much. We want to go someplace where we're wanted and where we can make some new friends. And so we haven't quite converted the mayor, but that's okay, because this is really a nonpartisan effort. Even though it is a political convention, it's an opportunity for you to be able to showcase your city. And so we think that these should be above partisanship as we put on these events. Yes, the program's going to be a little partisan, but the opportunity for you to showcase your city and for us to bring our people in from across the country to see your city is something that I think is very important. It's something that we look at as we're deciding where we're going to put our convention. So I just want to say thank you again. We've had a wonderful time. I've even danced with the mayor, which was a little impromptu, but now you all know it from the newspaper this morning. And it's been so fun to see the way that you've included some of your children. We've had children out to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We had the high school band out on the tarmac. We had another young lady who just sang beautifully for us. And those are the kind of traditional values that clearly you have in Kansas City and that we think are important to spotlight. So once again, thank you so much for the warm welcome, and we're looking forward to continuing our visit.
All right, well, thank you, Congresswoman. I appreciate you all being here. We had a great night last night, and we're having a good time as well this morning. There's so many things I'm grateful for, but one in particular is that, you know, when there's leadership on both sides of the aisle here that are willing to come together and make sure that we put the best foot forward to make Kansas City work is something that I think is really special, especially in, you know, the way politics works today. And when it does happen, like you're seeing here in Kansas City, I think it's something that's special. And you've got a mayor here that has gone above and beyond the call of duty and throwing out the red carpet and the welcoming mat, and it started over a year ago. And so very, very kind, and I thank the mayor for that.
Thank you, sir.
Very much appreciated. This host committee, Troy, the Dunn family, so many others, Jack Oliver, who's involved. These are folks, Linda and Kit Bond, obviously have put the party on their shoulders for many years. And I understand it's a host committee, it'll be a 501c3, and you know that's the way it works, but having people with the vision and the heart, not just for the party, but for the city of Kansas City, and the feeling that they have and the hunger to make this happen is special. You don't have to sell me on Kansas City. I'm a huge fan of Kansas City. For me, it's the West and the Midwest all bundled up into one nice gem. And I mean that. I spent a lot of time here in Kansas City. I was a unfortunate litigator for about 14 years before I became chairman. And I was involved in quite a bit of defense work in the oil and gas industry. And I just really love this place. And you've got a unique situation where you've got two great states in Kansas and Missouri coming together and doing everything they can to make it happen. Let me just tell you what this comes down to, though, for me. It comes down to, number one, the hotels, the arena, and the ability to raise the money. And then beyond that, obviously the delegate experience, which is obviously the city, the feeling, all those other intangibles. But what we're doing right now today, just this morning, is a lot of the technical work, talking about the money, talking about the hotels, and then visiting, obviously, the arena to make sure that it can work with the suites, with the entertainment space, the floor, the seating. I mean, it's a lot that goes into this, and choosing the right fit for the Republican National Committee. So lastly, just one more time, I just want to thank you all for the interest that you have in this process. It's a lot of work. People here in Kansas City are spending a lot of time and money in this review without a guarantee, and that's special too. It's a big outlay of time and resources, and we're very thankful and grateful. I guess we can take a few questions, Ryan?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Congresswoman, you've got 4 cities to consider. For you and your colleagues, what breaks the tie? Where does if all the cities have the money and all the cities have the facilities, where's the fulcrum?
Well, it becomes a little more subjective, and that's why it's not just me deciding this, it's not just the chairman, we bring a whole group of people with us, because we're looking at how can we best tell our story to the American people? We're in a situation, Kansas City wants to reintroduce itself to the country in some ways. The Republican Party, we like to keep reintroducing ourselves and letting people find out who we really are, because we think when you find out who we really are, you'll like us and you'll support us. And so we're looking for an opportunity to tell our story. We're looking for an opportunity to have a great partner in the community in doing that. And frankly, we want to go someplace that wants to have us here. The enthusiasm factor is an important one for us.
And can you gauge that in Kansas City?
Oh, the enthusiasm in Kansas City has been tremendous. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, well, I'm going to give this one a 4 and I'm going to give that one a 3. But it's the reason we travel with a group, to get us out, to be able to see it, to feel it. We're entering into a partnership here where we've got to really trust each other for the next 2.5 years to make this an event that the city is proud of, that accomplishes what we want to do as a party. And so part of this is really getting to know people and figuring out who we can trust. We find that factor very, very high in Kansas City.
Mr. Chairman, can you talk a little bit about the when part of this decision, in terms of when you would hold the convention in 2016 and
Sure.
how that might play into what cities?
Well, I mean, in the when question, Kansas City has a nice little advantage, which is the fact that they can either give us a June date or a July date. I mean, there's just no way around it. It's a nice nugget that Kansas City has in its back pocket that not every place has. So the convention is almost entirely likely to take place beginning on either June 27th or July 18th. One of those two dates, and I'm pretty firm on that, and Kansas City can do either one.
When do you make that decision about the...
Well, it's a good question, because a lot of cities want to know that too, because if I'm certainly only going to do a June convention, well, that would eliminate a couple of places. But I think it's one of these things where maybe in a perfect world, I may have chosen the June date, but depending on the facilities, depending on transportation, depending on how all of these factors play in, the July date's out there as well. So, it's a difficult question. I think it's a factor, but whether or not it's the make or break factor, it's questionable.
Mr.
Yep.
Chairman, when do you expect to make the final decision on where you're going to hold the convention?
I'll let Enid answer that, since that's kind of in her wheelhouse, but
Okay.
we're on the same page.
At this point, we are going to do 2 more cities next week. After that, we want to give our committee and each of the cities, we're telling each of the cities as we go to them, we're going to give you 1 more week after our visit to submit anything else that you'd like to submit, because there's some questions that come up from some of our members as we go around to these various venues and things. So we'll gather that information, give our committee members a chance to digest it, and then we'll start the process of negotiating. We haven't decided if we're going to get it down to a final 2 or exactly what we're going to do. There is an RNC meeting in Chicago in August, and presuming everything goes well, which it doesn't always do in this process. We had a blizzard in Washington that kind of set our schedule off a little bit. But assuming that everything goes the way we'd like it to, we'd like to make a recommendation that the RNC as a whole can vote on at that meeting in Chicago.
I do want to remind you that during that blizzard, we were there.
I knew that.
We know.
We showed up at the appointed time.
Yes,
You talked a little bit about, you said all along that this is a business decision in some ways. Does any city have an advantage in terms of fundraising, or is everyone relatively equal based on your current understanding in terms of raising the kind of money that's needed, particularly since the Congress has cut some of the money?
well, we've only been to 2 places so far, so we'll get updates from Denver and Dallas next week. So it's kind of a tough question to answer. I think, one thing I can tell you, I think all the host committees are working in overdrive to make sure that we're in a much better position in this process than I think we've ever been in the past. I would just tell you, I think what you're seeing differently now is certainly a greater emphasis on the guarantee of money, not just promises and it's all going to work out and we'll get it done. That doesn't cut it. but a guarantee of a certain amount of money in the bucket that we can count on. And some of that's coming from public places, and some of it's coming from private places, and some of it's in-kind contributions in the process of what it costs to make this work.
Kansas City is meeting your
Sure. Yeah, no, Kansas City's doing a great job. No question about it. Host committee is doing really well, very competent.
Do you bring moisture with you wherever you go?
Well, we did all right in Cleveland, but that's not a factor. I mean, I feel bad for when it rains. I don't care about it for us. I feel bad for the people who work really hard and it rains. You can't do anything about it. But that's the only thing I think about. It's a matter of for me, it's the arena, the hotels, and the money.
Are we passing the grade on the other things?
No, absolutely. You guys are doing great. It's a great city.
There's enough space. There's enough hotels for your convention. You feel there's the transportation's adequate?
Well, we were getting briefed on that this afternoon. I mean, certainly I know the basics, and certainly we wouldn't be sitting here in front of you if we didn't meet some minimal threshold of the capability to meet those standards. So I would say to your question, certainly Kansas City meets a level of competency and quantity and quality that we need to host a convention in regard to hotel space, this arena, and transportation. Now, you're in a competition, though, with 3 other cities. So, I mean, that's the question. When you put it all together, which city offers the best package for a convention? And that's part of the equation. I think Enid hit another important part of the equation, which is just the experience, the feeling, the trust, the sorts of things that go into making a decision like this.
Congressman, were you given a number today of where the local fundraising is in relation to its goals?
Yeah, we talked about that this morning. I mean, I want to get into the details of that, but I can assure you that these are not vague PowerPoint presentations with, unassigned numbers. I mean, this is the type of detail that if you were entering into a potential contract that brought the committee and the city and the host committee in excess of between security and the amount of money, $100 million, you would want to make sure that you're conducting yourself pretty thoroughly, and we are.
So you're confident that a certain percentage has been raised already to give you the city?
Yeah, I feel good about where they're at.
Mr. Chairman, I can give a little more detail to that. What we told everyone today and what we're willing to talk about today is that we're at nearly $30 million in-kind contributions as well as cash commitments. And we're very confident about where we're at, and that number is still continuing to rise. So we feel very good about where we're at, and thanks to the hard work of Peggy and Terry Dunn, they've done a phenomenal job along with the Finance Committee, and we feel very comfortable where we're at today.
Congressman, you were here a month ago. Are there any specific issues that you raised at that time that you've seen addressed or not seen addressed since you've been back?
Well, we were here a month ago really to do kind of a technical visit, and Reince referred to it. We wouldn't be here if we didn't feel like certain technical requirements hadn't been met. So we feel very comfortable that there are ways to make it work here. Now, there are always specifics in a convention that are unforeseen. I mean, the biggest one being when the Secret Service comes in and says, well, you might have liked it this way, but this is how we're going to do it. So you can be talking about transportation plans, for example, but all of that hinges on what the Secret Service comes in and decides to do. So we certainly have been talking about options. The only way that you can go about this is sort of make your best guess, make those plans, and then keep adjusting it as you go along. So I think the committee's done a wonderful job. I'll just add on, in some years past, the committees came in and the host committees came in, and the RNC sort of accepted what we now laughingly refer to as a trust me, I'm rich finance strategy. And we decided that was not the way to do this anymore. And so as we have gone out to these host committees and said, yeah, we know what you've done in the past, but we're asking you to really step that up and give us the opportunity to see some much more concrete numbers and plans as to how you get there. And Kansas City and the other 3 cities that we're visiting have certainly not just met that expectation, they've exceeded it.
Chairman,
Yeah.
did you talk about going to 3 days rather than 4?
Yeah, it's not in the cards. 4 days.
4 days.
Yep.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Chairwoman, what did you guys think of the presentations you guys have seen so far? I understand that there was a mock convention floor that you guys saw just a few moments ago, and that the former Vice President of the United States spoke with you guys last night. I mean, how's their testimony?
Well, I can tell you I met with the Vice President this morning, and he made it very clear to me that he's a big fan of Kansas City. It may have been the purpose of the meeting, but
No, we wouldn't do that.
I'm not quite sure. But in any event, he's a good friend and a statesman and one of our elders of our party that run all over the place for us. And he doesn't need anything or get anything, but he's just a benevolent man. I just thought that, and we've still got a ways to go. But clearly, the group here and the hosts are pulling out all the stops. I mean, they really, every little tiny detail. I mean, from walking off the plane to being greeted to a motorcade. I thought, wow, you guys all roll like that in Kansas City with a motorcade? Yeah, it's too bad. It's pretty nice. It'll all be coming to an end, though. But yeah, and to Enid's point, she was saying that people were waving. I thought when I went by, they were waving and hoping it was somebody different. Like they must have thought it was. But in any event, no, I mean, it's been a quality A1 experience, really. And folks here have obviously been working hard in planning this event so that every single detail is covered, and they're to be commended.
Now, I would just echo what Reince said. I'll tell you a little story. I was so not used to being in a big suite that I guess I put my wake-up call in at one end of the suite phone and didn't realize it wouldn't ring in the other end of the suite's phone. So I missed my wake-up call this morning, and I hear this knock on my door about 15 minutes after I should have awakened. And it's the security guard from the hotel saying, "We had a missed call here, are you all right?" And I said, well, I'm fine, other than I'm going to be late for our first meeting. But the attention to detail, the hospitality has just been amazing. But to add to that, also, I think we've all appreciated the sense of history. The focus on the 1976 convention, there is a certain symmetry there that has not been lost on us. And so we appreciate the opportunity to hear some war stories from the former vice president last night about what really happened at that convention. And it's a great opportunity to kind of see, again, that commitment to family and tradition and to all of those Midwest values that we've seen very prominently displayed on our visit.
The only thing that we missed was that the Royals didn't beat the Cards last night. And as a Brewers fan, so I can explain, it was pretty nice being 5 games up already in the season, but now we're down to 4. Yeah.
We'll make it up tonight.
Right, you bet.
Madam Chair, you talked about the 2 cities. There's some suggestion that the committee may be involved in negotiations with 2 cities at the end and sort of play them off against each other. Is that what we're looking at, or do you pick one city and say, let's cut a deal?
Well, you might think of it as playing them off against each other. We don't see it that way. We see it as really trying to refine these final bids. Because despite our technical visit, despite even our visit here, there are so many details that go into that final contract that we execute at the time that we decide on a particular city, that a lot of those details only come up in that negotiation process. I mean, things as minute as who owns the parking lot that we need to stage some of our buses, and are they willing to do it, and if so, at what rental rate? A lot of those things don't get finalized until you're figuring out how to put it into a contract. We may do that with 2 cities at the same time.
Let me just add in here too. Here's the other issue. There's a certain amount of, I'm sure, headache and hassle that goes on with the host committees here. When we're asking questions about, well, could you build 12 more suites here? Can you do this? Well, someone has to pay an architect to figure that out. Someone has to pay somebody to figure out whether the walls can be removed. And to ask that kind of stuff, you do a lot of it, but at some point, you're going to tell me as chairman of the host committee, look, I'm happy to do whatever you want, but can we have a little bit more assurances that we're actually in this point where we're going to keep spending money to deal with these questions? I mean, that's the reality. So at some point, that assurance gets you more ability to get the information and get to move the dial where you need it to go.
I'm just trying to get a sense as to when you would announce the city. I mean, there may be a point where there's 2 cities left, you're still negotiating up until August.
That could be.
That's likely.
So you might not have a final decision.
No, well, we really want to have that final decision so that whichever city we select can begin the planning process. We are moving it up earlier than we've done in the past, and we want to make certain that those cities are able to fundraise earlier and have less competition with the presidential candidate, who's also out there raising money at the same time that we're trying to complete this convention. So it makes sense for us to come to an earlier decision than we have in the past. But I'll just add one final thing, and that is, it is inconceivable to us that we ever end up in litigating a contract with the host city. So rather than find out after we've signed it that we didn't have a meeting of the minds on certain issues, that's why so much goes into negotiation and understanding. They're almost more understanding meetings than they are negotiations, in being able to let people know, well, this is what we'll pay for, this is what we expect you to pay for, and when you get into the fine details of that, that's what goes into that contract before we ever make the announcement.
All right, one more that maybe someone... Wait. How about someone who didn't ask one?
Nope, they're all happy.
All right, well then we'll do one from each of you, then we're done.
That's right.
All right.
Great press corps here.
Yeah, okay. Either one, go ahead.
I wanted to ask, do you think that having the convention here in Kansas City would have the same political oomph as having it in possibly a battleground state like Ohio, or a very large electoral state like Texas, or a swing state like Colorado?
Yeah, I just don't buy into any of that stuff. I mean, people say that, well, if you have it here, you're more likely to win. I mean, the history tells you if you have it somewhere, you're more likely to lose, actually. So I didn't, that stuff, I think you brought it up, or it's a business decision. And that's what this is, at least from my standpoint. Who's going to provide the best scenario for our nominee, our delegates, and whoever that is going to get this convention. So, all right, thank you, everybody. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you. You bet. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enid.